Okay, so let's kickstart our session, right? Those of you guys who just joined us, a very warm welcome, right? So if you're with us via the stream, right, just feel free to type your questions under the tab. I have the question chat open, right? And if you're with us on Zoom, I also have the Q&A box open. So if you have any chat requests, right, just feel free to type them there so that we can take a look at them together. Okay, so with that, let's kickstart our session, right? So today's focus, it's mainly on gold. So just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Lee Sing, right? You can also find me on LinkedIn. So for those of you guys who are watching a recording of this, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. So just a quick disclaimer before we kickstart the session, right? The information presented here is not to be treated as investment advice. It's for educational purposes only. Okay, so hello to you as well, right? I'm sorry, I can't see the names via the stream, right? But I'm seeing the comments, so just keep them coming. So this is the agenda that we will be covering for today, right? So first, mainly we will be covering on the key economic events. So for that, we will hop on to the economic calendar, right? So I'll be going through the Forex Factory as well as Vantage economic calendar. So that's the first part of the session for today, following which we will be taking a look at our trade setups. So today's focus would be mainly on gold, right? So that's what we will be looking at. And following that, of course, right, if you have any questions, just feel free to type them in the chat box. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at our economic calendar. Let me just bring that up. So I hope that you can see my screen. Okay, so for the economic calendar, right, the main events that we have coming up, right? So for this, usually I'll just alternate between either Forex Factory or VantageMarkets.com. So you can just use VantageMarkets.com for a more comprehensive view of the events. Right? So it doesn't just have the majors, it has the minors as well. So if you take a look at it, right, just under Education and Tools, go under Economic Calendar. So this should show you the high impact news events, right? So that they are usually either in red or the medium impact are the ones in yellow. So those are the main ones that we have here, right? So you can see that we have crude oil stock exchange data coming up. So those are the main ones, right? If you take a look at it on Forex Factory, this would be mainly the G7, right? So you can just filter them according to the high and medium impact news events and also the G7 currencies. So you can see that coming up, the main ones that we have for today, right? The high impact news events would be your FOMC statement as well as pound, right? So pound, you can see that we are seeing BOE interest rate decision, widely expecting a 25 basis point hike. That's for this week, right? So other ones would be the yen, right? So speculations of yen moving away from the low interest rates environment. So that's the other, right? So these are the main ones that we have for today, right? The key ones would, of course, also include the PMI data, right? This would be a reflection of how the US economy is doing. Right, so with that, let's take a look at our setups. So for our setups, right, as usual, we want to focus mainly on dollar index first. So let's take a look at that, right? And after dollar index, right, let's see where we are. So you can see on dollar index first on the monthly time frame. Let me just minimize all of this. So you can see on the monthly time frame right now, dollar index, right? It's testing this zone that we have over here. It was the previous resistance level, which price tested. We saw a strong push to the upside, followed by a reversal. And following which, right, we are seeing a break and close to the upside. So this is where we are right now on dollar index on the monthly time frame. You can see that when price starts coming into this zone on the monthly, the support region here, right, it's characterized by lower lows and lower highs. And following this, right, you can see this whole pullback leg itself, this whole region. One candle represents a wick, right? So essentially what this means is that for this particular wick, right, period of 1 week, price actually reached a certain high and low, right? And you can see that prices have been forming consecutive higher highs and higher lows, at least during this whole pullback session, right? So on the weekly time frame, where we are right now on the weekly, you can see that just with the most recent move, right? So one thing I do want to highlight is that while we can highlight support areas here, for example, right, you can see that this is a pretty big level that price tested multiple times as both support, and you can see this region, right? So this is still a valid support, but you can see that for price to push all the way down to this region, right, essentially it has to be breaking key support levels on the lower time frame. So if we take a look at it on the lower time frame, right, this whole move that we have to the upside, if I narrow this whole move down, let's say to the daily, you can see very clear bullish structure, higher lows and higher highs. Right, so while this support level that we have on a higher time frame, this low that we have here is still valid, you can see that with respect to where prices are right now, right, this can be a bit too far off. Okay, so this is where we are right now on the weekly, right? So back to the weekly time frame, we want to focus on the most recent price movements, which is basically these few candles that we have here. Now, if we take a look at where we are right now on the weekly, you can see that price broke the previous resistance area here. If I put this level in close, you can see that this was also a huge resistance that price respected previously. We saw a strong break and close to the upside. So this is really where we are right now. We're seeing a test of this zone again as a support, right? So if I were to just remove all of this, we just want to focus our region on just this move alone. You can see that when price broke to the upside, it broke and closed to the upside, did a pullback, right? So on the daily, you can see this is clearer, did a pullback here. You can see that this whole move that we have to the downside, this whole region, right? If I move to the lower time frame, let's say on the 4 hours or even on a 1 hour, right? 4 hours is actually quite clear here. You can see that prices were again in a bearish structure before it failed. So if you take a look at it, right, lower lows, lower highs to the downside before it broke and closed to the upside and a retest of this zone. Now this change on the lower time frame, right, this change in market structure on the lower time frame, when prices are on a higher time frame demand, right, we're seeing this support area, right, the resistance turn support area here. But at this point, right, when price starts pushing into this zone, there's two schools of thought, right? So one is that price could just push much deeper, breaking this zone altogether, that's possible, right? And the other is, of course, we're seeing that reversal here. But for that reversal to happen, you can see that this break or this downtrend must first be broken, right? So this whole move to the downside, it's basically characterized by lower lows and lower highs, as you can see, and following which price broke and closed to the upside. And this is really where the confirmation on the lower time frame comes in. So when price starts breaking to the upside, this region here, right, there are a few ways we can take demand zones, right? So one, it's of course based on the extreme of this area. So essentially the extreme of the region that caused a break to the upside or that caused a break in market structure. That's one, right? Or if you want to narrow down the search, right, the other way it's to look at it in terms of dojis. So I've highlighted this before in other sessions, right? So dojis, essentially, I'm looking at dojis on the higher time frames, ideally, because if you're looking at dojis on a higher time frame, what this means, right, if I have to translate this doji in terms of price action, it just means that for a period of 4 hours, right? So this is on a 4 hours time frame. So this doji, it's for a period of 4 hours. So for 4 hours, right, prices were trading within a support and resistance level with hardly any direction, right? So let's check this, right? So if you narrow this down to the 15 minutes, for example, you can see that this is the doji that we have circled. You can see for 4 hours, right, essentially there's this range that price traded within before we see a strong break and close to the upside. So that's one way to think of it, right? So you can see that this zone, so if I were to move back to this region, right, so back onto the 4 hours time frame, you can see this doji serve as a potential demand region here. So let me just highlight this, right? So it's the same thing, right? So now we narrow this search to the doji. You can see this doji over here. So you can see when price starts coming into this zone, again, right, two schools of thought. When price starts coming into this region, price could go deeper, right? Because a lot of it is on hindsight. Price could push deeper into the zone, breaking this area altogether, right? That's possible, right? So that's one. Or of course, we see that reversal. So again, right, you can see now we want to focus on this leg of the chart. When price comes into a higher time frame, let's say the 4 hours demand area, right? For price to start respecting this area and push to the upside, we need to see the change in structure again on your lower time frame. So you can see probably clearer, right? So on the 15 minutes, you can see here, right, lower lows, lower highs to the downside. And what we have here, the last area where price broke and closed, you can see a break and close to the upside here. This region, right, price broke and closed. And following the break of structure, you can see it broke and closed to the upside, right? It tested this zone again as a support area here. Right, so that's really the lower time frame structure. You can see this region. And once again, right, clear higher lows and higher highs, price broke structure. We're seeing that move, strong spike up. Now, at this point, if you take a look at it just in terms of market structure, on the 4 hours, right? So if I move back to the 4 hours time frame, you can see on the 4 hours when price did a pullback, right? This was the high that caused the pullback. You can see this region, right? This was the high that caused the pullback. So if we are bullish on the lower time frame, right, this is the target. Right, so the way I'll think about this is that imagine this target, right, it's like a destination. And this region, right, it's like fuel for your car or your vehicle to move, right? So you have that fuel at the same time, you need a destination, right, which is your target. If not, you wouldn't know where prices are potentially heading, right? So as much as possible, you can see price pushed up to the high. And this is in line with the bullish market structure concept that we covered, right? If prices are forming higher lows and higher highs on the lower time frames, right, we need to see that in a bullish structure, right, the highs are used as constant targets, right? So back to what we covered on our educational series, right? So this is where we are right now, right? So let's apply the same concept in terms of the lower time frames, right, with respect to the current price movement, right? So now that you guys kind of understand like this concept, right, let's take a look at where we are here. So again, on the weekly time frame, you can see this zone, right? So price broke structure, we're seeing that break of structure. We tested as a demand region. Right now, if you take a look at just this region alone, you can see again, right? Prices broke structure to the upside. Right now, we're seeing a pullback. You can see the break and close above the last high. If I move down to the daily time frame, this is clearer. You can see price broke and close above the last high that we have, right? So if you take a look at bullish structure, again, clear higher lows and higher highs. So price broke and closed to the upside here. We're seeing a potential pullback, right? So within this leg itself, right, prices are still bullish. So which means that when price breaks to the upside, it does a pullback, right? At this time frame, right, we're looking for any potential for a reversal here. So now let's focus on this leg, this whole region here. You can see that this whole pullback that we're seeing, if you move to the lower time frame, let's say on the 4 hours, right, this structure is clear, prices are still in a bearish structure. How so, right? If I put these levels or just focus on the lows of the candles, you can see that prices are again, right, in a bearish move. If we put these levels in close, you can see this as well, right, in a bearish move. So this is really where we are right now on the 4 hours, which means that we could see potentially a deeper pullback into the zone. Now let's take a look at where we are here. So on the 4 hours, right, you can see that price, we have a resistance region over here, which price tested multiple times as a support, it failed it as a support, and then right now it's testing it again as a resistance. We have a low over here. This is the low that caused the pullback, right? So this is a potential target on the 4 hours time frame, right? You can see that when price starts coming into the resistance region, what we're looking for here, right, it's that we're looking for signs of reversal. So at this point, you can see this area, right? If I were to narrow this move down to, let's say, the lower time frames, you can see this region, right? Prices are in a bearish structure. It's forming lower lows and lower highs. Within this zone itself, right, on the lower time frame, you can again see structure being formed, right? How so? You can see that price broke to the upside. So you can see this region, right? We're forming equal highs here. Price tapped into a potential resistance region, right? And we're seeing a test and a sweep of this previous resistance zone, right? So we're seeing a test of this zone. Price broke and came in, right? So it reached the target here, swept above it, but did not close above it. And right now we're seeing that reversal. So on the 1 hour time frame, you can see that this whole structure, right, where we're seeing that break, price potentially trying to form that new structure, but failing to break above this zone, right? This whole region, right, we're seeing that break here. So you can see higher lows and higher highs. And the end of that, the uptrend, right, it's shown with that break in structure here. So this is where we are right now on the 1 hour. So on the 1 hour time frame, right, we have a resistance region that price can potentially pull back into. Again, right, if price comes into this zone, you're seeing that this whole pullback, right, will be in a bullish move. How do we know whether price would come into this region or it's going to go higher, right? So a lot of it depends on the lower time frame. Once price starts coming into this zone, right, if you're seeing that lower time frame change in market structure, right, then this area that caused the pullback, it's the lower time frames target, right? Which also means that when price starts coming into this zone, right, this is an area which we could see price pullback, right? And of course, the 4 hours target, which is this region here. So this is on dollar index right now. With that in mind, right, let's take a look at where we are on gold. Okay, I hope that this is clear so far. If you have any questions, right, just feel free to ask them. Now let's take a look at gold, right? So gold on the higher time frame, we have a monthly high, which price came in, tested 3 times. You can see over here, this region, right? And we're also seeing a breakout and pullback, which is really this area here. If I put this levels in close, you can see there's this resistance area that price tested multiple times, right? So this is where we are right now on gold on the lower time frame. Now on the monthly region, right, we have this area. So if we're to just focus on this zone, you can see what we have here, right? Price broke to the downside, it did a pullback, and then it came in, right? It swept this low here, but did not close below it. So you can see that this high that caused a pullback on the monthly, right? This is a potential resistance area, right? That price could push up into, right? So same thing, if you take a look at it in terms of bullish structure, we have the high, right? So right now, if I were to paint this out, this is how it looks like. Price forming a lower low, it pulled back, right? Swept the low. So if on the lower time frame, right, we're seeing that bullish structure, it's forming here, right? Then this is a potential target on the higher time frame. Okay, so the monthly region, so I'll just put this as the monthly high. So this is where we are right now on the monthly, right? If you move down to the weekly time frame, you can see on the weekly, right, prices are, it broke to the upside. So we have this equal low that's being formed, right? Price came in over here, right? This region, right? And following which, right, you can see that price came into this this area. And then again, it broke structure, right? So it broke below the previous low. And then price came in again, and we're seeing this lows being formed. So this is where we are right now. If you take a look at it in terms of the weekly or even the daily structure, you can see that it's currently resting on the daily demand area here. Right, so let me just highlight this on the daily. So let's say if prices are in a daily demand, we have this high that caused a pullback. So this is the daily, right? This is a potential daily target. So again, we'll label this here. Right, so that's on the, sorry, the weekly. This is the weekly, not the daily. Right, so this is on the weekly because this is on the weekly time frame. Now with that, right, let's take a look at the daily structure. So you can see, right, this region that we have, right, when price starts coming into this area here, likewise, right, we need the change in structure. So you're seeing it very clearly on the daily time frame or even on a 4 hours time frame, right? Bearish structure here, prices forming lower lows, lower highs. If you see it on the 4 hours, right, you can see it even clearer, right? So bearish market structure pushing to the downside. And what happens after, right? You can see that this is the last high that we have that pushes into this zone. Again, right, if this bearish structure continues and price just mitigates deeper into this zone, right, then price should not be breaking the downtrend. Right, so you can see lower lows and lower highs pushing into this zone, this area here. And again, right, the downtrend is likely to continue because when prices are in a downtrend, we see that it does not violate the high, right? It could sweep above it, but in general, you can see the highs constantly held. But what we have here, you can see is that price broke and closed to the upside. This region, right, the last high here, this area. So you can see that price broke and closed to the upside. This area here, right, we have a target that it's much higher. Right now, right, this is really where we are. So there are no entries at this point, right? So price did not pull back enough for any potential entries. If you take a look at it on the 4 hours, right, the next region or the next area that we have over here, it's really this zone. You can see that it was the previous resistance level that price tested here. Came in, tested as a resistance 3 times. And right now we're seeing a break and close above this region. So this is where we are right now on the 4 hours time frame. Right, you can see this region. If I put this levels in close, I can essentially draw a horizontal line across that price respect, right, as both a resistance level as well as a support region. So this is on the 4 hours, right? You're seeing that pullback, right? Price broke to the upside. It did a pullback. Now within this region itself, you can see that this was the high that caused the pullback. Right, so we have a 4 hours target, this area here. So one thing to notice, right, is that when prices are in an uptrend, you can see that the targets are constantly, the profit targets are constantly pushing, right, to form higher lows and higher highs. So this is really where we are right now on the 4 hours. You can see this is the H4 target. So which means that when price starts coming into a lower time frame or a demand area here, right, and starts showing signs of demand, right, there's a potential 4 hours target that we can look at. Okay, now let's take a look at just this structure alone. So on the 4 hours time frame, you can see that this area, right? So if I were to move back, you can see on the 4 hours and daily, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Price did a pullback into this zone, right? So this pullback itself, this high, whether you're on the daily time frame or if you're on the 4 hours, right, it's just the same thing. It's just that, of course, if you're on the lower time frame, you see the structure more clearly. Now let's take a look at this movement here. So this area, you can see that on the 4 hours, right, price push into the zone. You are seeing again structure, lower low and lower high to the downside, right? And then what happens after, right? Price starts breaking. So depending on how this candle closed, right? If price breaks and close to the upside, this area here, right? Then there's a potential for the move here, right? So I want to zoom into this whole region, right? If you're on the 1 hour, let's see if we can see this more clearly. So on the 1 hour time frame, you can see this area, right? This is clear. So price came in, you can see structure. Again, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. And then what happens, right? It breaks to the upside. So this is a sign that prices are respecting the higher time frames demand, right? And you see this clearly on a 1 hour time frame. Bearish structure, lower lows and lower highs to the downside. And that change in market structure that really comes in here when price starts breaking to the upside. So this region, right? You can see price broke and closed above, right? Essentially this whole move that we have here. Right, so within this whole move, right, prices are still bullish. We have potential to move slightly higher, right, to the 4 hours target. Let me see, right, so this area here. So this is the demand on the lower time frame. So again, right, once we have identified this, right, so this is on the 1 hour. So imagine if prices are on the 1 hour time frame, which is basically this region here. Again, I'll just narrow down the areas, right? So this is currently on the 1 hour, and this 1 hour time frame, it's determined from the higher time frames demand, right? So let me just put this in blue. And so again, you can see that when price starts pulling back into this region, right, this area here, you can go to the lower time frame. Right? You can see this structure. So when price starts pulling back into this area, right, the change in market structure really comes in here. You can see lower lows and lower highs, right? If I go down to the 5 minutes, you can probably see this clearer. Right? So you can see structure, price forming lower lows and lower highs to the downside. And then at this point, right, this area here, right, it starts reversing the structure. Right, so on the 5 minutes, 1 minute, you can see this very clearly just in terms of the candles. Just looking at the candles, because this candles, right, of course, this candles, let's say this whole structure on the 5 minutes, if you go down to the 1 minute time frame, right, you can see this, basically this bearish market structure, lower lows and lower highs to the downside. Okay, so this is where we are right now, right? So if you zoom in over here, you can see that this whole zone that we have, this area, right? So price starts forming this bearish structure. You can see clear lower lows and lower highs. And then what happens, right? It broke to the upside here. So on the lower time frame, right, 1 minute, 5 minutes, you can see that this is a potential demand area. Right, so of course, this is on the lower time frame, right? So when price starts coming into this zone, right, if you're seeing a pullback aggressively into this region, you might not want to take an immediate entry. Again, you want to wait for that change in structure because price could just whip right through it, right? That's possible. Right? So if price comes into this region, again, we need to wait for the change in market structure on the lower time frame. You can see pushing into this zone, right? If it does push into this region, you can see this whole structure, right? It's really forming bearish market structure. So again, right, the downtrend is likely to continue. If there's any respect of this region, price could whip right through it or whipsaw this zone, right? But you can see that if prices do indeed respect the higher time frame or this demand region, right, you'll see that change in market structure happen, as we have seen right across all time frames. Okay, so I hope that this is clear so far in terms of how we can look at market structure across different time frames, right? The idea is really to look at it from the higher time frame, right? With this analysis, you saw that price came in, right? We really started from the monthly time frame where we saw this resistance zone and a potential pullback, right? Breakout pullback of this trend line. And following which, right, you can see that when price starts testing this region, right, on the lower time frame, right, back to the daily, right, when price starts coming into the zone, you can see even on the daily, right, this whole pullback area, right, we're seeing bullish structure. Okay, so yeah, you just go with this flow, right? And the most important thing to identify, right, apart from just the demand resistance regions, it's really to understand, right, where are potential areas that price could head towards, right? So let's say on a 4 hours time frame, right, if this is the high, then when price goes beyond that, of course, there's a potential for more upside. But beyond that, right, this is really when we could see a deeper pullback. So this is also when we want to protect the position more aggressively. Okay, let's take a look at another setup, right? We have requests for pound dollar. So let's take a look at that. So again, on the higher time frame first, let me just remove all of this. So if we take a look at pound dollar on the higher time frame, right, on the monthly time frame, this whole region that we have here, right, prices are basically, we're seeing clear, if you look at it on the monthly, right, higher lows, higher highs to the upside. So this is the last area that we have as a demand area, right? That's on a pound dollar, right? On the monthly, you can see that if I were to put these levels here, right, it was also the previous, if I were to stretch it across, you can see that it was also the previous resistance area that failed, price tested as a support, and then broke above it. That's on the monthly. You can see that this whole region that caused the pullback into the zone, right? This has been bearish. If you look at it on the weekly time frame, you can see very bearish structure, right? Lower lows, lower highs. On the daily, pretty much the same thing as well, right? So if you look at pound dollar right now on the weekly, daily, still bearish, right? As of where we are right now. So if we do see any reversal, right, there will be consolidation. And you can see that, so at this point, you can see that each area that caused the pullback, right, this becomes your potential profit target, right? So if price starts breaking to the downside, this pullback, this is a potential profit target. Whereas if you are seeing the reversal, right, you can see that your potential profit target will start changing to the upside. So that's one way to identify, right, a potential reversal. So if you take a look at it on the daily time frame, right, there's nothing much right now on the daily, right? Depending on how this day closed, right, if price moves to the downside still, right, on the daily, you can see that where we are right now is still bearish. Okay, now let's take a look at the 4 hours. So on the daily, you can see that this structure, right, this whole move, right, price broke to the downside, this area here. It was the previous support region, failed it, right, and then it became a resistance zone. So this whole area that we have. In purple, you can see that price broke structure to the downside, retested the zone again, the first time as a resistance, and right now just forming lower lows and lower highs. So that's on the daily, right? The day hasn't closed yet, so depending, right? So if you take a look at it on the 4 hours time frame, right, 4 hours, there's nothing much. We're just seeing that pullback here. So yeah, there isn't anything on the 4 hours, right? If I were to take a look at it, just the most recent price movements, you can see that price came in, right? It broke the low. So right now on 4 hours, we're still bearish, right? You can see that price broke structure to the downside. You're seeing that support level that was tested previously, and right now it's testing as a potential resistance region, right? So you can see this whole pullback that we have on the lower time frame. If I were to move down to, let's say, the 1 hour or even the 15 minutes, you can see that this area, we have a pullback, right? This whole area, this whole low that caused the pullback here. So this is a potential target. This is one. Right. The other thing to note is that you can see that when price starts coming into this this zone over here, right, pushing into this resistance, this whole move that you have here, right, on the 1 hour or even on the 15 minutes, you can see this, right? It's been in a bullish structure. So you're seeing higher lows and higher highs, this whole move that we have over here, right? So this area, right, I think on the either both on the 1 hour or even on the 15 minutes time frame, right, we need price to break and close above this move. Doesn't have to break and close above, right? But price potentially might tap this region, right? So that's one before reversing to the downside, right? That area here, right? If you take a look at it on the 15 minutes, the 1 hour, right, it's still bullish, this whole structure. So if we are seeing any kind of reversal, right, or any respect, because what happens is that price could push anywhere in this zone, right? So if I were to go back to the 4 hours time frame, you can see that this whole area, it's basically the region that failed previously. You can see that this whole area where price failed and closed below. So price could push deeper into this zone. And so you can see this whole pullback leg. If I move down to the 1 hour or 15 minutes, you can see that prices are in a bullish structure, higher lows, higher highs, right? And that's likely to hold this this way, right? This move that we have, right, could still hold unless you can see that on the lower time frame, right, bearish structures starting to form, right? Even if I'm on the 15 minutes time frame, you can see that this is the last low that we have. And if I to just mark out the previous lows, you're seeing again structure here, right? So higher lows, higher highs, right? So if price starts breaking and closing to the downside, then there's potential for further drop, right? And this is the last low that we have. It caused a pullback. Right? So if price breaks to the downside, right, we can take a potential lower time frame position, right, targeting this low here. Okay, so that's where we are right now, right? If I check this low, you can see that this low that caused the pullback comes in at 343, right? And this area has not been tested yet. Okay, so that's on pound dollar, right? Now let's take a look at euro dollar. Okay, let's take a look at it on the higher time frame first, right? So let me just remove all of this, right? So on euro dollar, you can see on the monthly first, right? So on the monthly, this whole area that prices are testing, right? So this zone. So we talk about bullish structure, right? We talk about higher lows and higher highs. And two things, right? One is that if price fails to break above this high, you can see that this low is a potential target. Now, this is how we can apply this concept here. You can see that again, if I were to just draw out this move, you can see higher lows and higher highs here. Right, if I put this levels in close, you can see this as well, higher lows and higher highs. And then what happens on this last move that we have here, you can see that price came in. It did not actually close above this high, right? You can see that it swept above this region, but it did not close above it. Now, this low that caused the pullback, you can see this low that caused the pullback becomes a potential target. And this is where we are. This is where we are right now. You can see this region. So price came in, right? It swept above this move on the monthly, did not close above it. And right now we're seeing that whole move to the downside, targeting this monthly low here. So that's on the monthly time frame. You can see price came in, right? Swept this region, right? You can see on the monthly, the weekly, right? This whole area, it's still bearish, right? Again, if you move down to either the weekly, if you want to see market structure clearer, you can just go down to the lower time frames, right? You can just see this area. So what I'm trying to look for, right? I'm trying to look for significant swing points, right? Clear lower lows and lower highs. You can see just marking out the most recent peaks and troughs, right? You can see the general direction of the trend. And so with that in mind, right, this is where we are right now on the daily. You can see that the daily, it's here, right? So daily is still bearish, right? When we take a look at this area, you can see that this whole move on the daily, right? So price came in the first time, it tapped into the monthly zone, the monthly low that we have, right? And the monthly low was derived from this region that caused the pullback. Right, so this was the monthly area, right? So I just make sure to get the exact level here. So this is really where we are right now on the monthly. If I move down to the weekly time frame, you can see on the weekly price came in, right? Tap this zone. We have again structure, so prices are still bearish on the weekly. You can see this whole area, right? Still basically lower lows and lower highs. If you take it down to the daily, you can see the structure here. Right, price came in, it broke and closed to the downside. You can see this zone. So price broke and closed to the downside on the daily. So any potential pullback, right, we can still target the pullback here. So that's where we are right now on the daily. But of course, right, this is on the daily time frame. If you take a look at this whole move on the lower time frame, you can see on the 1 hour, right? So price came in, right? It came in, tapped into this region over here, this move that we have. You can see price came in, right? It broke to the upside. So if you look at the structure, right, price came in here, you're forming, again, bullish structure, higher lows, higher highs. And the last area, price actually broke and closed above the zone, right? So right now we're still bullish. You can see that it has not break the last low yet. This is the last low that caused the pullback. It's also the last low that caused the break in structure. If I put this levels in close, you can see essentially this is the low that caused the break of the last high. So if you're looking at it on a 4 hours time frame, you can see this is really where we are right now on the 4 hours, right? We have a potential high over here as a target. So if price comes into this zone, right, as long as it does not close below this region, right, on the 4 hours is still bullish. We could see a deeper pullback potentially to test this high. So again, this is where we are right now on the 4 hours time frame. So two things, right? One is that if we're on the 4 hours time frame and we're seeing this price movement with a potential reversal here, right? On the 4 hours, we have a demand area here, right? So this zone, you can see that price came into this region. We have a area here that can serve as a demand. So this is on the 4 hours time frame. So two things, right? If price comes into this zone, if we do see a pullback into this area, right? Again, you can see any pullback into this zone. If I'm on the 1 hour time frame or even on the 15 minutes, you can see bearish structure, right? Lower lows and lower highs pushing into this area. You can see this, right, forming on the 15 minutes time frame, right? But understand that on the higher time frame, we still have a 4 hours high here. So if price starts pushing into this zone, right, coming into this area, if there's a respect of this zone again as a demand, then this high that caused the pullback is the most immediate target. You can see this area, right? This high that caused the pullback is the most immediate target. And beyond that, right, if price does go above this region, right, there's the potential from this zone here, right? The thing with this is that it keeps changing, right? So you can see that depending on how price moves, right, this setups would change accordingly. So what's important to know is understand that whenever there's a potential high that caused that pullback, that area is a potential target, right? Beyond that, price could move much higher, potentially, right? But beyond that, that's really not within our control, right? So if I to just bring this to Kiwi dollar, right? If we take a look at Kiwi dollar on the lower time frame, you can see that on Kiwi dollar, right? If we move, let me just do this, right? So you can see this whole zone that we have on Kiwi dollar, right? Maybe to better illustrate this, here, right? You can see that price came in, right? We have this region on the weekly, this whole area is bearish. If we take a look at it on the daily, you can see here as well, right? Price broke structure to the downside. And previously it was testing this zone, this area where we saw that consolidation. So on the daily time frame, right? This was where we were, right? Price came in, wick above the high, this area over here. Created this on the daily as a potential target, but you can see that price did not actually reach this zone, right? Just went way beyond that area after that, right? We just saw a slight pullback before price broke structure. Now, if you move down to the 4 hours time frame, right? On the 4 hours time frame, you can see that price came in, right? We're seeing equal highs being formed over here, right? This region, right? And then price did a pullback into the zone. You can see that this area. So price came in, right? It wicked above the high twice, right? And then when price starts coming into the zone again, right, it did not actually break structure. So you can see that price came in the first time, form a high, and it came into the zone again, and we're on a higher time frame supply, right? That was before this whole move to the upside. So at this point in time, right, there are two things, right? We could see a reversal from here potentially to hit this low, right? This is the higher time frames target, but you can see this whole pullback leg that caused this push to form the equal highs, right? This is a potential target as well. So this zone on the 4 hours time frame, right? So at this point, right, when price starts pushing into this resistance area, right, on the lower time frame again, what we're trying to look for is that when price starts coming into this zone, we're trying to see if there are any change in market structure, right? So if price starts testing the zone, right, starts forming lower lows and lower highs, then this is a potential target. This 4 hours that caused the pullback. You can see this was the region that caused the pullback. So the most immediate target is really this region here. Right, on the 4 hours, you can see it on the 1 hour as well, right? So this whole area. So you can see that when price on the lower time frame, right? If we do see any change in market structure, right? This is a potential target, this low here. Of course, beyond that, in the most ideal scenario, price could pull back much deeper. But in this example, you can see that when it reaches this low that caused a pullback, right? Many times you see that change in market structure again. So in this case, right, lower lows and lower highs pushing into this zone. And once that happens, you can see the change in market structure here, right? Price broke to the upside, did a pullback, and then you're just seeing this higher lows and higher high structure. Right, so a big part of the time, right, this whole area that caused the pullback at this point, right, it's really the potential target. But beyond that, right, of course, if price continues in this bearish structure, it could continue much lower. But in this example, you can see that price broke and closed above structure, right? So this is also when, if you're putting any trailing stop, right, it really comes in when price starts hitting the first target, right, to protect the position more aggressively. Okay, so I hope that this helps answer your questions, right? I have a question, right? How to mark the high and low on any time frame? So the way to do it, right, it's that if you're on the, let's say, the daily time frame, it's important to understand the general direction, right? General market structure, right? Whether prices are bullish, bearish, right? And then you try and mark out the lower time frame. So for example, right, this area here, if I'm on the weekly time frame, you can see on the weekly, right, prices are in a bearish structure, right? So lower lows and lower highs to the downside, right? And if you take a look at it on the weekly, if I put these levels in close, you can see that these are the significant swing points, right? If I take a look at this whole move, right? And all these swing points are very far from where the current prices are. So one way to look at it is just look at the most recent price movements, right? Look at the candles, right? The highs and lows of the candles. If I'm on the daily time frame, you can see this area here, right? This becomes clear. Lower lows, lower highs, structure to the downside, right? This is where we are right now on the daily, right? You can see that price broke structure to the downside here. So as long as price holds above this high, below this high on the daily time frame, right, there's still potential for bearish move. But again, right, if we do see any bearish move to the downside, right, this whole structure, this whole pullback leg itself, you can see this whole pullback leg, it's basically bullish. On the 4 hours, on the 1 hour, still bullish, right? So if we're seeing any kind of reversal, right, there are two things that needs to be formed. One is that you need to have a clear target, right? So if price starts pushing to form, let's say, a potential double top, right, it creates a potential target here for shorts. That's one. And the other is that you can see just in terms of structure, 4 hours, 1 hour, right, it's still bullish, right? Prices forming higher lows and higher highs. So you need to see that consolidation and price breaking structure before we see that reversal. Okay, so I hope that this answers your question, right, Sana? You're most welcome, Jamilu, right? So, yep, so that's what we have for today. Right, so for tomorrow, right, if you want to sign up for the session, if you want to sign up via Zoom, you can actually just go to Education and Tools, Educational Webinars. Just scroll, right? You can check out the schedule and topics, right? So for tomorrow, we are covering mainly on trading breakouts with price action analysis, right? The concept's pretty much the same in terms of how we are covering across different timeframes and also using market structure across the different timeframes. Okay, so yeah, if you are keen for that, right, please do sign up for it, right? And with that, I believe that's all the questions that we have, right? You're very welcome, Sana. So yeah, that's the questions that we have for today, right? Thanks everyone. Have a great trading week, and we will catch you guys again tomorrow.